Welcome to Persons of Interest, a podcast featuring interviews with interesting people doing interesting things, diving into careers, personal stories, life lessons, and more. Here's your host, Derek Dockett.
Persons of Interest. I'm picking up the pace on the podcast, and I'm not sure if this guy's really interesting or not, but this is like his third or fourth time being on the podcast, so that's got to count for something, I think. He is the news leader, sports department, the one and only. I take that back. He's the news leader, sports department, and he's a co-host of Sports Talk in Springfield, Missouri. We'll talk more about that because I've got questions. I've appreciated his updates about the one and only Art Hains, but he is the one and only Wyatt Wheeler. Wyatt, how's it going?
I feel like that on SNL, when they host a certain amount of times, that they get a brand new, that they get like this nice jacket. I feel like that's what we should have here. You should start getting us jackets. I don't know if you have the budget for as nice as they have, but something.
Yeah.
I've been on here.
The budget definitely isn't as nice as they have. I will tell you this. There is a budget because I made these stickers that I was going to give out for some to I don't know who, just promote it. And then I went a while of not doing the podcast at all. And now I'm back doing it because the schedule's a little bit more friendly. So maybe I can do like a silver jacket and then you get like a star for each time you're back on.
There you go. I'll put one of those stickers on my car window. I got you.
Nice. I have to send one to you then. What's going on, sir? How are things going in Springfield?
Busy, man. The football, basketball crossover season that's as bad as it sounds. Just trying to get high school football, high school basketball for boys, high school basketball for girls, college basketball for men, college basketball for women, and then finish up a college football season at the same. A lot of strategy, a lot of looking into how to best go about that and what the best stories are to tell and when. And just trying to get through November, and then it just turns into basketball all the time, and at least we'll have football off the bat.
You've done it before, so I'm sure you'll figure it out. I know it's not the easiest thing when you hit this time of the year, but I always enjoy having on. I think this is now like the third year we've done this, where before the basketball season starts, we talk a little college basketball, specifically the Missouri State Bears. And this year's a little bit different because on both sides of the program, men's and women's, you've got pretty much an entire new roster on the men, with the exception of two guys, and you've got a new coach and a handful of newbies on the women's side. So a lot of unknowns. Like we make fun of the coach speak, but there are legitimately a lot of unknowns when you talk about Missouri State basketball this year for both sides. Let's start with the men and Coach Dana Ford. Valley preseason poll came out. We know they're not picked last. They're not picked the top. Where they fall fourth, I believe.
Yeah, fourth was where they ended up.
Yeah. Middle of the pack, it's a different type of valley this year with Murray State, Belmont, and University of Illinois Chicago in the mix. Loyola Chicago out. So it's a 12-team Missouri Valley Conference now. Drake was picked up at the top. They've got pretty much a senior-laden lot of returners there. So we'll see what that works. But specifically when it comes to the Bears, after Donovan Clay, what else do you know?
Yeah, no, I spent the media day just last week walking around, going person to person and saying, "Who are you? Why are you here? What do you think you're going to play this year? I don't know if you're going to play. Somebody tell me something." It was pretty interesting. 14. You went through that roster. There are 14 newcomers on that roster, and they're just kind of 8 of those guys, 6 freshmen. A few of those will be redshirt walk-on guys, but you're seeing guys from Arkansas, Maryland, St. Peter's, Georgia, Colorado State, Northeast Oklahoma, A&M. So it's a pretty crazy time right now going throughout all of that, but really just trying to get a feel. Like there's a good mixture of older veteran players that are transferring in, and there are some like younger sophomores, juniors who will have a couple years of eligibility left, still using that COVID year. I'm sure some of them can apply for a red shirt at some point for one of their seasons, and who knows how long they'll even be here, because it's how transferring works these days in college basketball. So it's going to be a jigsaw puzzle that I have no idea how it's going to work. And I'm glad I'm not planning on it, because Dana's going to have to try to, at the same time as try to win games. Hey, you think he's going to try to keep a roster of transfers and guys that didn't play much elsewhere, try to keep them happy at all times, and also give time to the players who need to develop a little bit more, because I like some of these young guys. I like some of the older, and I think a lot of these older guys are going to get a lot of time just based off of what Dana's been saying. A lot of moving pieces there to just try to figure out how to use them.
There are 6 seniors on this roster now. The one most notable transfer that strikes me is Matthew Lee, St. Peter's. Of course, St. Peter's had the great tournament run last year. I think talk about a team that's completely turned over, that roster, with its coach switching and then all the players pretty much transferring or graduating out of that tournament run. But he's gotten some attention as someone that could be an immediate contributor outside of Donovan Clay, especially from a perimeter standpoint, as an outside threat, a shooter. That's the one guy that I feel like I know something about. I read stuff you've done. I've seen some of the videos they've put out introducing the team. Dawson Carper also returns, big man in the middle. I believe he now has an injury. You can tell us about that. But I guess in your write-up from Media Day, Dana said that he felt like he had 7 guys that could be starters, I remember seeing. Yeah. What do we expect, taking out the individual part of it, what do we expect from what you've learned just from Media Day and talking to Dana the times you have talked to him, this team to look like? Will it run through Donovan Clay? Or will it be they've got an inside threat? Do we even know anything of what to expect on the offensive side of the ball for the Bears this year?
Yeah, when we've asked that, just like, how's this gonna look? Because last year we remember it was Gage Prim at the top of the key, just looking around to find who was open, or it was Isaiah Mosley doing Isaiah Mosley things. You don't have that this year. You don't have 2 guys that are going to stand out and demand the ball all the time. So that's what Dana says is going to be the biggest difference. They don't have the 2 guys that are just going to go out there and be the dominant ball handlers. Right now you have a team full of guys that are passing the ball. I believe he said that like 70% of their points in scrimmages the last few weeks have come off assists, which I know will be music to a lot of people's ears over the last couple of years when you've seen the ball go stagnant and just seeing the playmakers trying to make plays. I do anticipate seeing a little bit of Donovan Clay, maybe in that top of the key type role, just directing traffic a little bit for the guards. He can be the 5 and have 4 guards around him at some point. You can see different little mix and matching of trying to figure out what these lineups are going to be. But I could see Clay doing a lot of that, trying to direct the offense a little bit. And then I'm just seeing some regular basketball like we're from guards that you're used to seeing instead of 2 dominant guys. I agree with you. Matthew Lee's going to be a guy that's going to be a true point guard. When you look at this team, when you look at last year's roster, point guard, they were so thin at point guard once DeMarcus Sharp got hurt. You was just seeing the DeMarcus Sharp injuries throughout. That really set them back to where Lukai Patterson was never really thought of as a point guard when they went and got him. So he was playing out of his natural position. Jamonte Black is not a true point guard, playing out of his natural position when he was there. And then you didn't see a guy like Skylar Wicks or some of these other names to where they didn't have a true point guard. This year you're going to have guys that are more capable of handling the ball. So you look at a guy like Kendall Moore of Colorado State transfer, a lot of experience there. He's going to play a lot. Dana's said that this is a guy that's going to be playing. Alston Mason is a guy Dana really likes. He's a sophomore from Oklahoma, good playmaker, and 2 guys Dana really feels will contribute pretty much right away. And then the one surprise from Media Day was freshman Damian Mayo. He's a freshman from Link Academy. That's the new Branson powerhouse high school basketball program they're playing in the Tournament of Champions this year. They finished second in the country at Geico Nationals this past year. So Damian Mayo's played with guys that are more highly ranked and more talented than some of these guys. And he's playing with future NBA players last year. And now he comes over and is going to be it could be a starting point guard for the Bears this year. Just another ball handler that does all the things that Dana talks about as far as being tough, trying to dive on the ground for those things. Dana likes that kind of mold of a player, whether it's an Isaac Haney, Ryan Krecklow, Ross Owens of years past. So Mayo will do some of the dirty work and was a 3-star out of high school. And then you look at some of the size, and of course you don't have the Gage Prim type player right now, but you have Donovan Clay, who's a versatile player. Jonathan Mogbo, I think, is going to have a role. He's the Northeastern Oklahoma A&M JUCO transfer. And then you also look at how far does James Graham have to go? That's a top 100 player out of high school, went to Maryland a little early, never really caught on. They fire their coach. That's a guy that could come along as well. And then really like NJ Benson, the Mount Vernon, Illinois kid that's coming in as a freshman, 6'8" kid that was a really great player in Southern Illinois. I think he looks like a really good Valley player if you get eyes on him. That's just a kid that can shoot a little from anywhere inside the three-point line. And then I didn't even mention in there the Arkansas transfer, the Georgia transfer, Dawson Carper. Brian Trimble Jr. is going to have a role on this team. That's an Akron transfer, an older guard that Dana thinks can take some big shots late, volume 3-point shooter. And you heard all those names. I didn't mention a kid that's been here for longer than anybody on the roster is Ray Fayers, believe it or not. So, yeah, no idea. You could say a lot of things, and then you're just going to have to figure out what sticks. But I assume they're going to be playing around a lot these early games. But then you notice that some of their tougher games are right off the bat.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get into the schedule. As you were going through all those names, the size actually does stand out when you look at Dawson Carper at 6'11", Clay, Jonathan Mogbo, NJ Benson, 6'8", 6'8", 6'8". You got 3 6'7" guys. So they have some size on the roster. How all this molds together remains to be seen. I think we all remember a few years ago the roster that Dana had. You got on paper all these guys that look so talented, but at the end of that season, Dana even said it just didn't all come together for that team. It just didn't come together. So
that's one thing I've asked Dana about. Just, hey, you know that this is going to attract some comparisons to your year 2 roster building. You were picked to win the league. You end up 6th and barely escaping the play-in round. And he's just, this is nothing like this is nothing like my that second year. This completely different people, just a different kind of construction and everything. And I think he learned a lot from that. I think just watching his recruiting throughout, I think he did learn something there from how that roster was constructed. And I think they focus a little more on the people they're bringing in sometimes instead of oh, this kid's talented, why is he available? Not really asking why is he available and going out and getting them. Instead, they get to know these kids and figure it out.
Perfect. Yeah, again, the scale, it's funny how college basketball's changed so quickly with the NIL transfers, all these different things. It's probably changed the mentality of the recruiting. I know there's been several coaches talking about that in press conferences and media calls and things like that. So they've all learned lessons. They learn the type of player that fits their system, the type of player they want that can play the roles that they need. So surely, like you just said, Dana's learned the type of player that he wants to have in the program to do the things that they need to do to be successful.
And then another thing to add on to that, I think one other thing that Dana did this offseason that's a little overlooked going into this year is that he did some new things on his coaching staff.
Good point.
So you have Corey Gibson taking the head coaching spot at Northwestern State, and now you get an assistant coach spot open, And you see all these teams starting to do these special assistant to the head coach stuff. That's straight out of The Office with Dwight Schrute and all them. But you're seeing, you bring in Buzzy Carruthers, who's got some ties in the AAU, MoCan. That's a valuable spot for recruiting. I know some of the guys on the team already knew him because he had those type of connections. And then you look at some older guys that joins the staff. So Marty Gross, that's your director of basketball operations. When they've had some younger guys in that position in years past, that's a guy who had a 10-year stint as an associate head coach at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. So he's been around for a while, assistant coach at Wichita State, has connections with Dana there when those two coached together, assistant at Rice. So this guy has a lot of basketball experience. And then you also look at Randy Peel, who's a special assistant to the head coach. He comes from Texas Southern, where he was an associate head coach since 2018, had some postseason runs, made the NCAA tournament twice. He was Dana's associate head coach at Tennessee State.
Oh, okay.
So I think the Dana just going out and adding those two guys, get a little more X's and O's, try to make up for some of the things where he's maybe struggled over the last few years. I think that's a huge thing from Dana to go out and add some experience and just get more basketball, some older minds that have been around for a while in that room.
Yeah, and from what it sounds like, also guys that he has longstanding relationships with, which could also lend to the trust factor, guys that you can lean on and they got your back. So interesting. Yeah, I know there was a short stint for former Southern Illinois, Kansas State coach Chris Lowry, who jumped to take a different position. So I'm glad you mentioned that coaching staff was starting to take on a different look, but does have a different look going into this year. It'll be interesting to see how that part of it plays a role on this year going forward as well. We look at the schedule, it doesn't quite blow you away in terms of what they've got on tap. The one thing of note is that with the Valley expanding, more conference games this year, so it's a little bit different there. But on the non-conference side of things, you've got BYU, St. Mary's, and then that's why I say you'd say, I don't know if beating BYU and St. Mary's and all the rest of the is automatically going to get you an at-large bid. In the way college basketball looks nowadays, you got to have hope that someone is ranked that you get on your schedule and you can beat a ranked team and get yourself as close to the top 25 or get your get your rating as high as you can get it going into late February. But I guess it'll be interesting to see how good the rest of the league is, because that's where you can make up ground. I know we've always said, heck, at this point, it doesn't matter. Get to March, get to St. Louis, and play your butt off, and that's the easiest way to get it done. I'm always an optimist. I'm always a glass half full type of person. I would love to see them come out of the gate, as I would every year, and just start beating the wheels off everybody that they play, just to show that they've got something to prove in the non-conference, to get the wheel rolling into conference play. But I don't know if this schedule lends itself to that, because I feel like their tougher games are going to be within conference, obviously outside of St. Mary's and BYU. But I don't know, anything of note to you outside of the conference schedule?
Yeah, it's not the word I keep going to is it's not the sexiest schedule, of course. It's when your opening night is Missouri S&T. I don't think Great Southern Bank Arena will be sold out for that one. But I think you look at some of it and it's going to prepare you to try to get better towards the end of December when you go to Northern Iowa, when you start and you really begin Valley play. Now, I think they got a pretty good draw when you look at the two Valley games. They have November 30th at Illinois, Chicago, and then they come home to host Bradley. I don't think you can ask for too much more than that when trying to get this group all formed together and starting to play well going into those games and trying to go into conference play when really January 1st they play Drake. And January 1st, I think Drake is by far the best team in this league going into the year. So that's where I'm at. I know Dana's tried talking us into why it's a good schedule, and I just don't buy it too much because he says that, it'll help it'll help you look better in the eyes of the selection committee. Maybe you beat a BYU and you'll have that head-to-head. Nobody can argue with the head-to-head or conference champions or something along those lines. But then he goes back to, I think it's probably a one-bid league. So everything's about trying to get better towards early March. But Middle Tennessee's interesting at home, 2 p.m. game at home, and then really after that you get the Bradleys and the Central Michigan just to have a better year this year than last. But you're not really seeing very good home games until that Bradley game's going to be big December 3rd. Maybe you can win your MTE for the first time in a while, which you should when you look at the teams in that field. So I don't know. This team just needs to play. The one mistake he made year 2 was build way too difficult of a schedule to where they never really got going into Valley play. And I think with a slightly easier, with a way easier one going into this year, maybe that helps this team a little better off, because you're not going to lose. If you lose a Missouri S&T opening night like you did the Little Rock, that'll be a whole different story.
Yeah, I don't expect that.
I don't expect that, but it's just, it sets up better than how it has for some of those teams in the past.
I will say, and I'm speaking strictly from a fan standpoint, that, exactly what you said, it's just not sexy. There are just there aren't that many names, especially when it comes to the home schedule. Like when I think about, I want to make a trip to Springfield, what game am I going to try to go see? Honestly, I'm going to wait till conference season and see what the better matchup is. I'm going to wait till, I don't know, maybe I go down there for the Drake game on New Year's Day. I don't know. And it's funny thing you say about that Drake game on January 1st. They actually play Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls prior to the Drake game. So they actually start out after they get through with the remaining parts of non-conference. It's just weird this year with having the Bradley UIC in.
I hate it.
Yeah, it's just, and again, that's part of it. Like I said, it's from working in college athletics, specifically in the Valley, I know what their schedule challenges are. They're trying to accommodate so many different things, trying to maintain some league equity and harmony and television. And I think the most people I want to reinforce, the Missouri Valley Conference tournament, Arch Madness, did not shift weekends. It is still the first weekend in March. And that's for a number of different reasons. It's for television, it's for when they can get the building, and it's for their schedule. That's why it is. So they've got to make all these adjustments on the front end so that the conference tournament still fits there.
Yeah, no, when you look at last year, the Bears were in that conference championship race at the very end.
Right.
And you have early December loss at Illinois State in overtime when the Redbirds turned out to be really bad, and the Bears really didn't get going until later in the month and starting going into January. Who knows, if you have that game in the middle of the season, maybe the Bears are, when you normally have the game, maybe the Bears are able to contend longer for that championship, and they were just out of it after that loss really stuck out there when you're just like, oh, they had a shot there.
Yeah. Who knows? It'll be a long year, and it's going to feel like probably even longer with there being 20 conference games. But again, they're shoving them all in the same span of time. We'll see what happens. First weekend in March, 2nd through 4th is the Arch Madness, the Missouri Valley Tournament. So, gosh, seems like it's going to be a long road to get there, but it's going to be here before we know it. October 26th, as we record here, and the season starts, they've got an exhibition game on November 5th against Newman, and then the season starts. The Missouri S&T game is considered not an exhibition, so I guess it's just non-D1.
Oh, no, it's a big one. Big opening night showdown.
Yeah, November 9th, Wednesday, November 9th, and then they'll go to BYU November 16th, follow up with Middle Tennessee November 19th, and their MTE that Wyatt mentioned, they go to the Bahamas. They will play UNC Wilmington, get the winner of Vermont and Ball State, and they'll have one more game after that. And then it's the UIC Bradley into December, St. Mary's, Purdue Fort Wayne, Oral Roberts, Central Michigan, Sam Houston, and Valley play December 28th with Northern Iowa, Drake on January 1st. Before we jump to the Lady Bears, this new look Valley, I know how much you love tweaking the hands of Murray State, Murray, Kentucky. Gosh, there's so much roster, not just with the Bears, but roster turnover just everywhere. Drake is the one team that's just, they stuck consistent. What else out in the Valley, I guess, if you were to pinpoint one storyline in the Valley, taking away just it's a different Valley, a team, whatever it is, what's one of the interesting storylines that we can look forward to, you think, the league?
Yeah, I know Murray State, Murray, Kentucky hasn't seen an airplane or only has a Dairy Queen in their entire city. But yeah, I think they're very interesting. They bring back a coach who's had success there, didn't have success when he went away, but he has a brand new roster and everything. But people recognize that program now. People recognize that's a good place to go make a name for yourself. John Morant's done wonders for that program. So that's a team that I look at and just wonder how quickly they can get going, because I feel confident that they'll be pretty good in this league. And I think they'll be as soon as this year. I actually put the Bears behind them in my preseason rankings. I've had the Bears 5th and Murray State 4th, just because I've seen Murray State have that success before. I mean, you look at, I think Northern Iowa is another one to keep an eye on. Just Ben Jacobson, everything, probably the best looking coach in the Valley. But
has there been a poll done about that?
What?
Has there been a poll done about that?
I've done a poll.
Okay.
Of course. He's the man around here, and he's getting recruits out of the Springfield area to go play for him in Northern Iowa. So he doesn't have any transfers on his roster this year, not one. And for a team to do that in 2022,
it's amazing.
Is pretty unreal. So I'm very interested to see just the conflicts of different styles of building rosters works.
Yeah.
Because Ben's just going out there I can do this, and I can coach my own players and develop them into stars like AJ Green. And AJ Green was supposed to be a star when he came in, but just in a player of the NBA. I'm excited to see what Jacobson does, and I think that Drake team, Tucker DeVries, as long as he's there, I think Drake's going to be a tough team. And I think the one thing to watch with them, how good are they, and who's going to come take Darren DeVries away from them? Because
that's what I'm wondering.
Darren DeVries, you're taking away Tucker DeVries as well, most likely, because that's going to be a package deal with a big NIL thing to go along with them. So I think Darren's the best coach in the league, and I think he's bound for something bigger after this year.
A couple of notes, me reacting to two things you said. One, on DeVries. Absolutely. You just wonder at what point someone will hire him away, because he's proven he can do it. Another successful year is just going to be like, man, he's going to have someone come calling, and will he be able to say no will be the question. And number two, you mentioned Murray State. The first thing that popped in my head when you talked about a coach going away, not having as much success, coming back, it comes to my mind the Creighton Blue Jays, Greg McDermott. He was the coach at Northern Iowa in the Valley and left to take a job at Iowa State. Did not have as much success and comes back to the Valley to coach then at a member of Creighton and has lots of success, and he's still there. And now they're one of the top teams in the country going into this season. Some have them in the top 10, top 5, some rankings, and they're a pick for some to go to the Final Four, which is funny because all their years in the Valley, they didn't make it to the Sweet 16, and then they just progressively start to get that talent. They make a jump to the Big East. Success just starts to snowball slowly, and here they are.
There too, man. NIL stuff. They're able to go get that South Dakota State kid to come in.
Yeah.
No, that's been great. But
so we'll see if Murray State, if it can be mimicked there at the same time with coach coming back.
I would love for them to have success, just to see some growth for that city.
Yeah.
I would love for them to have an airport. I would love for them to have drivable roads. And
get a Chick-fil-A.
What?
Maybe they can get a Chick-fil-A or something.
Maybe a Chick-fil-A, at least something.
A Costco.
Dairy Queen is not the best. It's got some good. The Blizzards are good, but they need an Andy's.
If I can only get Andy's to sponsor this podcast. All right, let's jump to the Lady Bears real quick here. So, new coach, got some roster turnover there as well. Tell us what you know about Beth Cunningham.
Oh, she's been fun. I've enjoyed her tremendously. She resume is unbelievable. I think everybody saw that coming in, was like, whoa, that's something different. Just her coming over from Duke, all the success she had, an associate head coach at Notre Dame. She great player when she played at Notre Dame. Has experience just all over the Midwest, but the kids are loving her, and great personality around here, having a lot of fun. And I think it was hard to argue with that hire when the Lady Bears went out and got her.
Yeah, we all saw that. Was speaking of coaches getting the payday. We knew at some point Mox. the success was from day one. She had the players buy in, and she just kept she kept the ball rolling going forward.
Yeah, they beat a ranked opponent night one. They went to Minnesota and beat them on opening night. And then I think she elevated the level of play. She took over a roster that was already set with the team that went to the Sweet 16. And I think she had them playing at a higher level than Harper did.
Yeah.
You see the success Harper's having at Tennessee right now. The Harper's Say Today coaches poll just came out, and the Lady Vols are number 4 going into the year. That's just incredible what Kelly's been able to do. It was incredible what Mox was able to do. But the one thing about Mox, at the end of Mox's tenure, is she didn't really leave much for the staff. Of course, that's players graduating and everything. Jasmine Franklin deciding she didn't really want to play for a new coach again after tearing her ACL last year, deciding to transfer to play for Kelly Harper at Tennessee. And then you see like a Jennifer Eze who came for Mox, transferred to VCU. Some of these other girls just deciding to leave or just be graduated, whether it's a historic player like Bryce Caleb. Maya Benhar was great, and she's pursuing academics somewhere that has the degree program she wants to do. Cunningham had to come in and build this roster a little bit and try to make it something that's going to be one of the better teams in the Valley and compete for championships, because that's what you're supposed to do as a Lady Bears coach.
Yeah. And Sydney Wilson is still there, though.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess you guess you can call it a snub, not on preseason team, but I saw the quotes in the paper. She's ready to rock and roll, sounds.
No, I think I'm right there fighting for her, because she's been so great for these teams and just flies under the radar because she's around so many other great players. And now that all of them are pretty much gone, this is her team. She's the face of this great era of Lady Bears basketball, where you have 2 Sweet 16s, 3 NCAA tournaments, would have been a 4th if it wasn't for COVID canceling one. And who knows how far that team could have gone. So that means she's ready to go. She can play whatever position, guard 1 through 5, just a really good player. And I think she's the perfect one to have right now when it comes to trying to bring a lot of transfers and trying to bring some new freshmen along as well.
It's going to be interesting to see how they mold together, too. 3 seniors in the rosters, 2 juniors, 4 sophomores, and 3 freshmen. I mean, it's just weird. I guess my question about the Lady Bears, do we know what you've learned from Coach Cunningham, the style of play we can expect from them? Because I felt like with Kelly's teams, the athleticism she took to a different level with the types of players that she got within the system and them playing in the style that she wanted to play. Mox got them to a more intense level. Jasmine Franklin might be, I've been watching since the Jackie Stiles era. She might be one of my favorite Lady Bears to watch since I've been following this team, just because I love the way she played. She had this grit, this bulldog mentality. What do we expect from a Beth Cunningham coached Lady Bears team?
Yeah, this is going to be a lot more guard play, it seems. It's not going to be as much as we've seen Mox have some really good post players in the last few years from the players that she took over, whether it was Jasmine, Abby Hip, Jennifer Eze turned into one, Naya Wachuku was still on the roster, right? She set a record in rebounding last year for the school in the NCAA tournament. So I think you're going to see a little less of that. It sounds a lot like Beth is going to try to do what Notre Dame does as far as what the offense is going to look like. You're going to have, especially when she talks about Jade Masagayo. She's a freshman, 6'3". That's a player that Coach Mox actually recruited here, and it sounded like Cunningham was hinting at that Mox was trying to get her away from Missouri State and go to Virginia. After she took off, Beth put the full court press on trying to keep Masagayo here when she's a 6'3" player from Texas. And Beth said that she fits the mold of what she wants to do perfectly as far as a player on the inside, a player that can direct some things. She's listed as a 6'3" guard. I don't know if that's a mistake, but she's listed as a 6'3" guard. And Cunningham said, think about Brianna Turner. from when Notre Dame was winning a national championship a few years back. And that's this type of mold that you're going to see them try to turn Masagayo into. So you look at her. You also have a good post player in Kennedy Taylor, a transfer from Colorado, who Mox actually tried recruiting the first time around, decided to go to Colorado. Mox leaves. Kennedy Taylor's homesick, and Cunningham has another need at the forward. And then you look at India Green, who we've been talking about a lot in Springfield, former Kickapoo player, put up outrageous numbers, Class 6 Player of the Year when she graduated, 5'11", a little undersized for her position, but then she went to JUCO and put up the same numbers against taller players. So she's back in Springfield, so looking forward to seeing her. And then you look at the guard play. Who's going to step up here? Anaya Thomas is a Kansas transfer. She's your starting point guard. She's really quick. They expect her to score a little bit more than what she has in years past. When she was at Kansas, Capria Brown is a transfer from Dayton. They have a Dayton assistant now on the coaching staff here, brought her over. That she was a highly rated player out of high school. She's going to be one to, she wants to be more of a defensive minded player. And then you look who's going to step up this year. Sydney Wilson's going to be in there. Paige Rocca is going to need to be a more consistent three-point shooter, or Isabel Delarue is going to have to be. And then you also look at Taylor Woodhouse. She's finally able to play when she was a 4-star recruit out of high school until she tore her ACL, and then she was held out of the last couple of seasons just because of depth and trying to get that injury back to 100%. So she was really highly touted out of high school. So that's a top 100 player that Mox was able to recruit here that we just haven't been able to see how she could step up and how much that injury's affected her. I don't think this is a 6th place team in the Valley as they were picked to be.
I'd be shocked.
I don't think the Lady Bears are capable of doing that. I could be surprised, but I like what they're doing. I'm excited to see it. I know they have their first scrimmage next week, and going to be very interested to see what it looks like, both of these teams. Just what in the world am I going to be watching this year? Yeah.
Thinking of the league, and again, I know there's a lot to be said and a lot to be figured out amongst both men's and women's side of the ball, especially in the Valley, when, like we keep saying, it's a different look Valley, but I'd be shocked if this was a 6th place team in women's basketball in the Missouri Valley Conference. One interesting note that these types of things I love seeing and following along. Assistant coach, Lady Bears, folks may remember Kinsey Williams. Kinsey Costas is now her last name. She is now an assistant coach for the Lady Bears. She's now back in the program after being an assistant at Florida Atlantic under former Lady Bears assistant coach Jennifer Sullivan, who was head coach there. So pretty cool to see her come back to the program and continue her coaching career as an assistant as well.
She works, man. I've been seeing these three assistants all over the place. Yeah. And even on the director of basketball operations is Haley Dieselkamp, who's maybe the greatest player to ever come through Drury. So adding some young people that are going to want to do a great job, I think it's a great buildup of what they have. I talk a lot with the Beckemeyer family. That's the Republic star here in town. She's a commit for next year, for 2023. One of the more impressive high school girls basketball players I've seen in my time down here. She committed to Missouri State, and just how much they've grown to love this staff when they loved the previous staff as well has been very fun to watch. So these guys are all over it.
Yeah, that's awesome. As normal with the schedule, when we look at that for the Lady Bears, a lot more brand names on that schedule, which the landscape between the men's and women's has just always been that way. But the opportunities for them for at large certainly could potentially be there depending on how these things shake out, especially within the other leagues. But you've got 2 Big 12 opponents, which is always a strong league. You're playing Oklahoma State and TCU, but the schedule includes Mizzou and SLU. I'm super glad they're able to continue playing each other and the Lady Bears, because at one point I know we weren't sure if that was going to continue, but it looks like I think it will. Have they played SLU in the last few years? I don't even remember.
I think that was, I forget what the historic number was on that, but it hasn't been recently. I think it might have been 2010s.
Yeah, so I feel like it hadn't been recent.
Been a little bit.
Yeah. They start the season with also playing S&T November 2nd. They will play Mizzou in Springfield on November 7th. Interesting, that's a Monday game. You'd like to see that on a weekend, but schedules are schedules.
I just see that where I'm going is I'm trying to hopefully it's not conflicting with the football, not a Friday night, not a Saturday.
Works right for you. So they may schedule that for you.
Maybe they did it.
They
for
had you
me,
in mind.
but no, I think this was set by the previous.
Yeah.
This game with Mizzou on opening night for your new coach to have Mizzou come in opening night. Like I asked Beth that the other day. So do you like having Mizzou on opening night to begin your career? She said, "What was that?" And I said, "Do you like having Mizzou on opening night?" She said, "Oh, sorry, Wyatt, I can't hear you." So I think that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah.
No, that's tough. Mizzou has some turnover with they lost their best player to the transfer portal. They still have the Stratford girl, who's one of the might be the greatest player in the history of this area. But playing SLU, and then Oklahoma State's a team that can be really good as well.
Yeah.
Tough 3 games off the bat.
Yep. Then they go to Vegas for Texas A&M, or I guess I should say, always rumored mill to be added to the Missouri Valley Conference, Texas San Antonio.
I would love it. I love San Antonio, man.
I'm not sure that fits within the geography, but hey, crazier things are being discussed.
Who cares about geography?
Middle Tennessee, they also play in Vegas. They will go to Toledo. They will play TCU in Fort Worth, Martin in Springfield. They will play Little Rock in Springfield, and then the conference slate will begin with Indiana State on the 29th. Again, Belmont brings the heat this year coming into the Valley. They've got a very strong program there. We've got some coaching turnover across the league, a lot of places. Tanya Warren, I think, she's got to be the dean of the Valley in terms of the women's side of the basketball now. I'm just looking through, trying to remember who's been coaching since I was last working in the Valley, and I don't think there's many that are there when I was working there now, taking away the new teams into the league. So it's going to be definitely different, but like you said, I will be shocked if this team finishes 6th by the time they head to Moline for the conference tournament.
Oh, yeah. Belmont's supposed to be really good. Murray State's supposed to be really good. And Illinois State has some returners. So those are your 3 right there that you're looking at. Bradley going to have some turnover. Southern Illinois is going to have some turnover. UNI is always a tough out. Drake's always a tough out. So it's a really good women's basketball league. Evansville's got a stud up and coming. So no, there's a lot in this league.
Belmont, actually, that's a legit ad in terms of the women's side of the league. So
they almost beat Kelly, right?
Yeah.
They almost beat Tennessee in the tournament.
Yep. So if Drake gets back there and they start to put those pieces together, and you see the Lady Bears do what they do and Northern Iowa does what they do, talking about getting back to that era when it was 2 or 3 teams at the top and with 2 separated records. You got a 1 and a 2 loss conference rated team, 2 teams top 100, whatever it might be. I think that's definitely a possibility with the addition of Belmont there, but we'll see what Murray and UIC add to the mix too. I know you've been also doing, in terms of, we're recording a podcast, but you've been doing the radio gig for now a few years. Is this like year 2 or 3?
I'm in year 2.
Yeah. How's that been working out for you?
I've enjoyed it. Not as much in recent weeks as I usually do, but no, I like it. It's different. It gives me another way to interact with community and some of the people that I work with on there. Just a ton of fun. But of course, you're going to touch on art, and that's just been a really tough thing these last few weeks. But it's important right now to continue everything and keep it going.
Yeah, I know, and you're right. I was going to actually, my touching on art was going to be more of commending you for what you wrote a few weeks back. I knew it probably came from Art because as you've been working on the show, I'm sure you've gotten to know him so much more better than any of us, because you're with him day in and day out, outside of being sidelined at basketball game. I guess not sidelined because he gets to sit down low. You sit up in the wedge.
Time, baby.
But I know it's been a tough time for his family. Appreciate the updates. If folks have not seen it, the GoFundMe, I know it's probably something, from how I know Art, he probably would not want to see that at all. But
not at all.
But here's the thing. It shows how many people care, and the lengths of where his voice is heard, from Springfield through the Kansas City area, through here in St. Louis, alumni, you name it. What he has meant, not only just being a voice, but someone that passionately cares about the university and about Southwest Missouri since he's been there. I think that's what people admire and respect. We're definitely all pulling for him. I'm glad you guys have gotten the podcast figured out, because I get to listen, because I know I've always begged you guys for that.
Yeah, I've been on them. Don't worry. I've been on them for 2 years, but it happened yesterday.
I know.
Days ago.
It got in Apple Podcasts, and I found it, and I was like, yes, because I use a different podcast catching app to pull RSS feeds. I was able to do that finally. So I was like, yes, nothing against the website, but my flow, it really helps. On the run, on the treadmill, pulling in and getting to hear your voice when I'm on a 3-mile run is the greatest thing in the world, Wyatt.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's great. It's great.
No, yeah, thanks for plugging the GoFundMe. Love the man, and so many other people do too, and just miss the heck out of him. Hoping to get the Omaha, Lincoln area soon to be able to see him. It's been a big void in my life for the last month, and it's been a big void in a lot of people's lives right now.
Yeah, it's not the same. I will definitely mention that I'm one of those people that when I'm in the car, when football or basketball's on, I can pull up the streaming app on my phone and listen. It's not the same without his voice, because there's just something genuine about hearing Art call Missouri State Athletics. Definitely, we just, I guess, at this point, it's not about the sports. It's about him, his family, his health, and we're all pushing and just wishing the best for him to get well. You stay strong, keep doing what you're doing. You guys keep up the great work on the program, because I know he would greatly appreciate it, to seeing it keep going forward, as he's probably gotten to know you even better and appreciate your wit and humor, because it's a different flow for him, I'm sure, with having how you came onto the show versus how he was on there, because the way he treats the callers, different the way you treat the callers.
No, the one thing about him, it is a different show than what he's been doing for a long time.
Yeah.
I've tried some. I've had spots here and there where I've had to carry the show by myself for a little bit, and God, that sucks. It's just a lonely place talking to yourself, and that's
why I don't do a podcast by myself. That's why I always want to have a guest.
You want to have the conversation, and you want to go. It's hard to show anything there, because the one thing that Art didn't really get to do too much by doing it in that style was showcase his personality.
Yeah.
And he has an awesome personality.
Does.
He's funny. He's smart. Just the wit he has on a lot of things. You comment on my wit. Just the wit that he has coming back to a lot of that stuff. It's just so funny. And that's always how I've looked at it. I've never looked at it as my show. I'm there to make Art better and just help people get to know who this guy is, because he's a better person off the air than he is on the air, and he treats everybody with respect on the air. So it's just the type of person he is, and I don't care if, like, we've had these discussions lately, just trying to figure out how is the best way to go about the show, because it's going to be months before Art's able to even think about doing anything like this, even have a call-in segment on the show from the rehab hospital. The thing that we're going to do is try to keep this show going as long as we can, and make sure it's there for him when he gets out. And we don't care if he's there for 2 weeks and has a farewell tour while on those 2 weeks. He deserves that. And I just think there's so many people who love him and want to make sure that's there for him, including myself and people I work with, that we're going to do whatever it takes for however long just to try to get him there, to give him what he deserves.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like I said, keep doing what you're doing. I know from someone that has been a long time, and not even that long ago when you think of all things considered, but listening when I had a part-time job in Springfield, my first time listening to sports talk, and I'm like, who the heck is this person calling, and why is this guy not hanging up on this guy? That's a ridiculous question. Like, really? Is this happening? Like, St. Louis Sports Talk Radio, you would never have some of these things happen. These guys would get hung up on in a second. Really? But just the consummate professional, and you're right, his personality off the air, when you get to talk to him in a conversation at a meet and greet or anything like that, just a rock star of a guy. I don't know if Art will anyone else will listen to this, but again, I'm always praying for him. I mentioned the GoFundMe I gave. If you guys haven't, to help his family out as what they're going through, I will link that in the podcast notes and share it on Twitter as well once again. But we're rooting for him. Hope he's got a long road ahead, but ever so slightly, we've seen some steps in the right direction. Even the smallest steps are needed, but they're in the right direction. That's what we want to hear.
Oh, yeah. I had a little arm movement today. So
awesome.
That's when you're trying to get unparalyzed. Arm movement to seeing even a little bit's a big step. And went from just last week trying to move around ice chips in his mouth, do some talking exercises, to saying bye to his physical therapist on her way out, and saying his kids' names a week later prayers are working.
That's awesome.
Keep them up for him, and if you can donate to help Art Hains during his recovery from West Nile on GoFundMe, every little bit matters for him.
We're rooting for you, Art. Keep it going and battle as best you can. I don't know what else to say outside of that, but we're wishing all the best for you. We'll keep praying. I am Derek Dockett. This has been Persons of Interest with Wyatt Wheeler. You guys should follow him on Twitter. He writes a lot of stuff. He works really hard, so I'll give him that. Outside of that, he can be annoying on the radio, but I won't hold that against him. Follow him on Twitter at Wyatt Wheeler _NL. Is that right? You didn't change that, did you?
_NL. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. What else did I plug for you? Newsletter, get a subscription, support local journalism.
OnlyFans.
Are you using you got on TikTok? Are you using it?
I haven't used it. See, the company told us we should get them and we should start doing them, but I only got it to make fun of them for telling me to do it. And I started doing a couple dances and just haven't really gotten back to it.
Didn't really promote anything worthwhile of, hey, I just wrote a story, or here I am at this stadium. No, here's me dancing in my apartment.
Yeah, that's what I did. The Missouri State added Matthew Lee from St. Peter's, so I started dancing around like a peacock.
Read his work, the Springfield News Leader. He's on social media everywhere. Just keep up with him. Wyatt, I really appreciate you doing this, sir. It's been fun, and sure, it's always been at least one game a year. I think last year was only the tournament, but I got to get to Springfield this year for a game, regardless of if it's Lady Bears or Bears. But when we do cross paths, sir, maybe we get barbecue or something. Who knows?
Yeah, don't get as mad at me this year when I give you a hug.
Did I get mad at you? I did get mad at you. I don't know.
I gave you a hug at Arch Madness, and you're just like, get off of me.
I couldn't remember. Yeah, I did. I do remember saying, get off of me. I think maybe wasn't in a bad mood. Maybe you did. Maybe you tweeted something that annoyed me. I don't know what it was.
I thought I was embracing a friend in my arms. I get scolded.
Sometimes you need to be scolded. Let's just put it that way. Wyatt, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, you know it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Persons of Interest. This podcast is a personal project with the goal of sharing stories that might inspire others to create their own path. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a guest suggestion, you can reach Derek on Twitter at @DDocket. This has been Persons of Interest.